Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audio Files. So I'm going to talk about 5 of my favorite jazz records. And I say it that way because I'm not going to say that they are my absolute 5 favorite, because depending on my mood, it's going to definitely change. But I would say that these are definitely right up there as 5 of my favorites, if not my top 5. And the ones I'm going to show you here are not in any particular order or anything like that. I'm not good at being able to place an order on which one is better than the other or things like that, because again, sometimes it's just very dependent on my mood. So here we go. Let's start off with Sonny Rollins and Saxophone Colossus. Just a great album. Was it St. Thomas, I believe? Yeah, St. Thomas is just such a classic song. This particular version is a DCC album, which came out, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s. It's number 2777, and probably the best sounding version, although they've actually most recently taken the stampers from this, or the plates from this one, and reissued several different variations of it over the past I don't know, 5 years or so. So you can get ones that sound pretty much identical to this for a lot cheaper than this version now. But again, just one of the greatest jazz albums of all times, in my opinion. Next one, which is kind of a newcomer for me, kind of took me by surprise. It was one that I probably wouldn't have purchased unless it was part of this new Blue Note Classic Vinyl series that has come out. And that is the Horace Silver Quintet, Song for My Father, which is very appropriate for me right now. But anyways, just a great album, and just took me by surprise when I listened to it. Just really, really enjoy this album quite a bit. Listen to it quite often, especially on Sundays. I love listening to jazz on Sunday during my breakfast. So kind of call it my Sunday brunch, you know. Next up, which would probably be no surprise to anyone who follows my videos here, and I've done a sound quality shootout on this one as well, and I've had several different audiophile versions of this album as well as an original, and it is Charles Mingus, Aham. Just an awesome album. I bought a version of this, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, just because I had heard about great things about it and loved the front cover and figured I'd give it a try, and it just blew me away. It's definitely up there as probably maybe my favorite jazz album of all times. If not, it's, again, depending on my mood, it's right up there. And this version, the one step, obviously is just a phenomenal sounding version. So next up, I'm going to take a Miles Davis album. And I'm not going to do the traditional ones that you see most of the time. Ones like Kinda Blue and Bitches Brew and things like that. I'm going to go off the beaten path a little bit, but it's not too far of a stretch off of Bitches Brew. And that is On the Corner. Just a really cool kind of a rock jazz fusion mix of kind of a funk jazz fusion album. Just so phenomenal. Some great musicians on it. Just a really, really cool, I think, super underrated Miles Davis album. So, if you kind of like that, jazz, funk, progressive sound, you'll really love that song, that album, I should say. All right. Last, and certainly not least, is a John Coltrane album. And that is Blue Train. And this is a super early pressing, not a first. Well, it claims it's a first. I think it's like a second pressing or something like that. But it's a pretty early copy. It's a little bit beat up, but plays real well. But anyways, Blue Train. I've loved this one from the early days of me getting into jazz. I had initially started out with a John Coltrane compilation, and a couple of the songs from that were on that compilation, and kind of later on in my jazz endeavors, if you will, but still quite a while ago, I saw it being reissued on Super Audio CD, and it became a staple of one of my jazz albums especially when I was working in audio retail, and it would be one of my jazz demos. So for anyone who wanted to listen to jazz, I would put that out, SACD on, and just sounded phenomenal. So went through those kind of quickly, but I would love to hear your take. What are your top 5 jazz favorites? You know, what are your favorite jazz albums of all times? Are you like me, where you just have a hard time picking your top 5? Because, you know, like I mentioned before, my top 5 can change next week. It might be, you know, I might swap out one of them for something else. You know, there's definitely some Thelonious Monk and some Eric Dolphy and Lee Morgan albums that can definitely go into that category. And it would be very hard for me to make a decision. And, you know, maybe I'll make a second version of this that lists an additional favorites of jazz. But, you know, I've been really getting into Thelonious Monk lately, and Lee Morgan and Eric Dolphy, like I mentioned. Those guys have just been gaining more and more of their albums lately, and just really enjoy those. So, but that's my take. Would love to hear you and what you have to say. What are your 5 favorite jazz albums? You know, if you liked what you saw here, hit that like button. If you want to, please subscribe to my channel. I would love it. And, you know, make some comments below. You can also check me out on my social media pages. I've got links to those down below as well. So thank you very much, and you have an awesome rest of your day.